This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, sir.
It is 6 o'clock. I will call the planning and zoning meeting to order. Everyone will rise.
Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you and to serve this town. Father, we pray that we'll be able to do the right thing and see what's right in our own eyes and through your eyes. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Minutes approval for March 1st, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes, March 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have communications tonight. We have Councilmember Paul Holder. He is actually our council liaison, and he just wants to go over some talking points, and I'll shut up and let him go.
Welcome. It's good to see y'all tonight. And it's the first time we got to talk to everybody here on the meeting. So I wanted to bring to y'all the work that we did on March 10th this year. And we met in a meeting and kind of set our priorities for the next few years. Now, this priority, I'm gonna go over them, but some things are in the work already in the Lord. It's not what we're gonna get done, but what's most important, what's next, and it kind of goes that in the group that way. So, and I would like to have a lot of discussion. We ask questions if you have any, and let's talk it out. So, first thing that we had in our list is the pier growth, is the pier. And to finish it on time and on budget. And that's gonna be a tough one to do right there. Cost is going up. So, but we're trying to finish, we want to get that finished by October. So that's the next thing under the pier is communicate with stakeholders. And that means the town and everybody really communicate what's happening on the pier and how we're doing it with it. And we then work with the newly designed established pier committee. And some of you are on that, but the pier committee is very important now and one of our most important projects. Any questions about the pier?
Can you share any budget numbers for where we're at today and where you think we're going to be?
We're right at 17 million and a little over 17 million. But where it's going to come out, we've got over 18 and a half set aside for it. So we'll have to see where it comes. But it's, you know, the cost has really gone up since we started here, like everything has now. So.
Thank you.
Next thing is determining location of town hall and then appropriate the use of the property, the remaining property. And, you know, we built a town hall across the street. And we're gonna be now working on where we're gonna build town hall. Because we can't keep meeting here forever, the problems in this building, so. So we will be building a town hall and courthouse. And it was originally started, like, thinking they're gonna have it on the street. But a lot of us are thinking about bringing it this side of 17. And, you know,
Are you referring to the council chambers?
yes,
Okay,
Council
so we're
courthouse.
going to be an expansion behind the current building, talking about bringing it on this side.
yes. But we haven't looked at any plans or worked anything out to the cost. So we're going, that's one thing we want to do. But that hasn't been approved, was originally planned to be put behind the building. But we're thinking it might come back over here. We haven't voted on that.
Evidently, there was a survey that came out today. I haven't seen it yet, but I had a phone call about it from someone asking, they're confused about the questions, how the questions were posed, and concerned that the questions weren't clear enough to get clear answers. Is that where you're going to get your public input, or?
Well, I hadn't seen this survey. I knew one was going out. I haven't seen it. But we were looking at that to see what I hear a lot from people that I am in contact with. They'd rather be on this side. But there's some other people might want to know, the survey is to find out more.
So I guess my concern is, and again, I have not read the survey yet myself, but my concern is that it sounds like some people are confused about the questions, that they're not, that there's at least some questions are not clear about. So you just might want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I don't know. It just went out. Bill told me today, it went out, and Chris just mentioned that he saw the survey, and he got the same thing, there was a question about one of the questions on it. So,
Are they giving you any kind of timeline as far as how long we can meet here safely?
no, they haven't. There's a problem with the roof on the other end of this building here. But right now, the roof right here, I think, okay, but there, it's gonna have to be something done. We don't have a timeline on it. Okay? And it says the possible use of the rescue plan money there. We got 1.2 million, from the federal government last year, and we got 1.2 million coming this year, LMS, the American Rescue Plan. You've heard about this going out to everywhere. And we have got that sitting aside now. And we can decide how that money is going to be used. And it can be used for a number of different things where we need it. It's good to have that money set aside for that. Or something. Next thing is focus on the improving employee morale. And it's right now we're concerned with everything you hear about all the raises that people get everywhere else. And it's everything you happen with all the costs going up and the cost of living. You give a cost of living but raise, but the costs are going up for everybody. And so we want to make sure that we keep the morale high. Our number one asset is the employees of the town. So it's very important to have a good working relationship and they feel valued. Okay? And this just talks about some of the programs that are out there for them. And they will be adding some teamwork training and improving the evaluations and merit-based system. Okay. And the next thing that they had for, I guess it's for, but this communications one for both external and internal. We're not done a good job of doing that. It's always been a problem, you know, and we want to improve it. We have added a public information officer. That is really starting, he's doing a good job. He's taken over a lot of duties. He's busy, but we want to use him any way we can. And also, we're going to have a new website that will be launching, I think around June, July. They're building it now. And I've seen this website and it really is great. And you can get a lot of information about it. And you can put your email into the website and you can tell it that you want to know information about certain areas. And it will send you out any information that goes in on that area. So there's much improvement what we have now. Yeah, all right.
Paul, on the website where it's talking about local user email address, just to go back to the survey for a minute. My experience has been a few years ago working in town hall. There were precious few email addresses on that newsletter list. And I'm just going to be concerned if we start having surveys and we get reports that the majority say anything. Then it may be the majority, small pool. I hope when the survey results come in that the staff and council are going to share the results, not just make sweeping statements.
No, we will share it. We will share that. I commit to that. But I think the website is very good. Greenville has been using this system. A number of Charleston, a lot of cities around the state are using the same system. This company has built websites for, I think it's 15,000 cities across the country. So they have a lot of experience. And they're going to help us communicate with that and be user friendly to go in and get the information we want. Right now, it's hard to find stuff on our website, as you know. So, but it's quite open. And also we're doing a quarterly in-town meetings that they, Bill is talking about what's going on and asking questions with businesses and the, we want to keep doing that on a quarterly basis. Bill is implementing that.
One more question.
Yes,
I know there's been, what, 2 of them so far?
yes.
What kind of attendance do they get? Are people showing up?
No, it's been low attendance, but they haven't been advertised well. Because we don't have a system that advertises that type of thing. That is a problem. How do you communicate that this is happening, get people to it? Everybody knows about when the town council might have their meeting because it's been the same time for years. So. And it also said focus on internal and external teamwork network, networks. Okay, that's the must do next areas there. Now I want to go to should do. The next, one of the first things is this is available on 17th, right here, right in front of us. And you talked about that the other night. And I think, what did you say, 70 businesses are closed on 17?
We're going to talk about the vacant lots. Yeah.
242 on the residential.
It was a little, I think it was a little over 70 vacant parcels, but not all of those are built.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think those are breaking borders either.
No, they're not. That's vacant.
but we have a lot of buildings on 17 that aren't being used, and we want to improve that. And for the past couple of years, the COVID has been very hard, as you know. And those businesses have been shut down. It's hard to get the investment going right now. But we want to improve that, and that also to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help them with permitting, do things to make it easy for somebody else in this here in town. And we,
Let me just add a point there. There is a checklist when somebody comes in to open a business. So they're given a form to, here's what you need to do, here's how it needs to be completed. I know the business committee is also working at our meeting on the 19th. We're having some code enforcement officials come in and tell us what's the biggest problem. You know, what are the reoccurring problems that maybe we can assist with, maybe we can educate the business owners to try to help them from the ground up.
and that's good. Yeah. We've got to do that. We've got to do everything to try to get people. And we also have got, we're going to be using Chamber of Commerce. We haven't used the Chamber until recently. We had a meeting the other night where the Chamber had a cocktail thing down here at a restaurant. And I forgot how many people there, but had a great turnout. So we want to use the Chamber to advertise and help you get business on 17. And so next thing is parking. We have a meeting next week, Thursday at 10 o'clock. It's going to be talking about the recommendations of the parking committee. And we want to improve parking. We're growing around this area. You look at all the growth that we're having right along the corridor here, and it's going to make it harder and harder for us in the future, especially with all the houses that's being built south of town. That's a concern. And we're going to be looking at the beach access. You know, we're parking on golf carts on the beach and everything. We're taking a hard look at that. We're going to be making some decisions on that. But it's a moneymaker for the town, and the parking meters are going away. They're going now. When you go to it, you text a number, and it's got an address on the sign, and you pay through a text. So, and you put your license number in the text. And on a golf cart, you put the state number that's on the windshield. So, so we're going to be talking a lot about parking in the future. It is a big concern for the town. Next thing is the future use and management audit year. That's something that after we get the bill, we're going to decide what are we going to do with 3 buildings only. We have one police house, the Surfside Diamond, but we've got 2 other buildings on it. And then what's the best way to utilize it, and how's the best way to make sure that we have the go it the right way. We looked at what they're doing down in Charleston, and we've gone down and looked at the pier down there, which they manage the whole pier. It's good to look at that. So we are trying to get ready for opening the pier, but once we get it built, it's going to take a while to get the buildings open into next year. So.
Can I circle back 1 second? I think parking, see this charge fee to use crossovers.
Yeah.
You stand on
So
that.
that's in the parking area going down to the walkovers down there. And they're going to be going to charge for those. But if you got a sticker, you don't get charged. It's just we have a problem, especially on the north end, Ocean Lake, and driving over and parking over in the areas there and using our areas and using our parking. And they, of course, don't pay for any parking or anything else. Well, they'll have to pay once they bring their golf cart over.
I don't see I never get off on the parking thing, and there shouldn't be. I think the parking issue is more than an issue.
Well,
I think the residents need to be shorter the parking places.
Well, that's what we want to keep. We, then what, if you do charge, these people won't be just coming over and using it. They'll think first about when they have to pay for it.
Shouldn't come down to who gets out.
Yeah, you're right. Because you could have, north of town, you can have 10 to 20 golf carts from Ocean Lakes right there in that first little area. And you can't park close to where you want to go. So, that is a concern. Then after that, next one is underground utilities. We want to, we like wiring underground, and it's good for a beach town, and you do have wiring underground, but it's a very expensive thing. The mayor went over the cost that he was given to certain areas, and it's in the millions of dollars to get to the lines on Old Ocean Boulevard, just on Ocean. Now, I live in Charlotte, and in Charlotte, most of the areas that are that have been built for the last 30 years are underground. A lot of it's done underground in neighborhoods, but they haven't got that here. But it means that you don't have to worry about the wind taking your power out and the telephone or cable when everything's underground. So we'd like to get more of it done as time goes on. And then I have some honorable mentions. And the first thing is to pay off the pier. We don't have any debt. You know, we're debt free now. So the $4 million that we borrowed for the pier, we want to get that paid off as soon as we can. So it's very important. Well, we do have that debt now too. That's the only debt, I'm sorry. This $4 million that's the only debt we have. And
We haven't utilized that 4 million yet, though. Yeah, right.
we are using some of it now because it takes FEMA too long to reimburse. So we have to pay it and then FEMA gets the money back to us.
And then we repay the bond.
Yeah, but we have the money.
Yeah. So the expectation is not to utilize the $4 million.
Yeah.
So it's possible that we won't use any of that.
It's possible, but we probably are going to be using a portion of it.
Was that four included in the numbers you provided earlier, the 17? 18?
No, we have that just for a budget right now.
Okay.
But we have the other money in case we need it. And we have to have money to pay the bills, the one you wouldn't know FEMA to pay you back.
Sure.
It can take several months to get a check from FEMA. It'd be great if we don't have to use it. Then develop a bike trail. This is something that would be nice to have. It was in the development plan you had before, and we talked about it some. But we would like to have a bike plan it does go through the town. But we haven't figured that out yet. It can't go down Ocean Boulevard. They can't do that. So we have to figure out where it should go and how we can get it. So, and focus on public safety. And that means that we're going to possible staff additions for the pier. As we get to pier, that's going to be a major part of the search side. And we're going to have police and some fire help down there. And Kenny's looking at that right now. And it's important to have plans on how we're going to do that. And we also have a safer grant in right now for the fire department to hire 4 more firemen. And a safer grant means for 3 years, you don't pay the salaries of those firemen. In the 4th year, you pay. But we won't find out for college until May. So
And
we-
grants a commitment, we're going to have a huge budget tail up there.
Yes. So it gives you time to plan ahead. So we've been long done with the pier and everything else, but now we get to work. We have to start paying for the requirement, but we know it's gonna come. And focus on the equipment that we need also for the public safety. And the cars, it's amazing. We've been going through that battle, Kenny and when the fire department are doing, in recent, the cars are costing way more than they ever cost. And they've gone up in price. And so we're having to plan that better. And it's like everything, cars, they said this year, a new car is $10,000 more. Now that hurts everybody.
And also fuel too.
Yes, cost of fuel too, yes. And the next is branding, and they want to look at that and how do we have branding for the town? And this can be in overlay for 17, because we looked at that before, but how we want the town to look and have the branding in a lot of areas. The cars, the main cars, and also with communication we do and everything, it should have a brand like look in the image. And we've got to work on branding because that's important marketing come out. And I work for major companies and branding is the lifeblood of a corporation. Next one, it's sidewalks. There are some sidewalks, Ocean Boulevard and on Hollywood, but we'd like to do more, but that's a long-term commitment. And it's amazing when you go to it, residents like a sidewalk, but they want it on the other side of the street from their house. So it's a harder thing to do. But I don't like people walking in the street, especially, it's amazing me how many people walk on them on the north side of town, and they walk on Cedar. And you see it all the time. People are out in the road in Cedar, and that's a pretty heavily traveled road. So it's all something that we would like to do. Public safety plan, and the one thing that they've already talked about is the name that we had for the e-district isn't going over that well with the people down there. They want to call it the Pier Village. And they kind of come up with that name themselves down there. And I think that describes the town better, the e-district. It doesn't tell you much. So we want to have a look at that and what we can do in that area too. Drainage improvements. Of course, with all the rain we get, especially sometimes,
You missed height restriction.
oh yeah. Ensure height, yes. Yeah, that's very important. I don't think there's one council member that doesn't believe in the 35-foot height restriction. And we want to hold to that. And we are going to change that. So, the drainage, and that's where we got to look at the lakes, because they are needing to be dredged right now, because it's been a long time since they've been dredged. And they, not as deep as, they fill up lots of slush, and that has to be done in the future. And like some of them, the county pays 70% of the door, we have to pay 30%. So we got to plan for that in the future. And, but we have money to do that, in that the money we pay every year on the fees, on waste, no, the water fee.
We have money to do the dredging.
No, we don't have it yet. Because, we filled up, I think it's around 600,000 a year on the fees. And next is the code of ordinance review. We're going through all the chapters now and looking at the ordinances. And we worked with Kitty on finishing chapter 8 right now, we're working on. And that's a lot of laws and things to do with the police department in the area. So we're going through them and trying to update them and get them to where they be. If they aren't needed, take it off, and to make it easier. And you'll be able to find ordinances better on the new website. That's going to make a big difference on the new website. And general things on the town and consistency when they read it is beautification and continue to do code enforcement for across the town. We are talking about Thursday, the right of ways, and trying to make sure we don't have people putting stuff in the right of ways they shouldn't. And also the last thing is something we've got to do, and we haven't done is say long-term financial plan. And that's a must do, but that's going to take, we got to get through the peer and some of that to really take a look at that. So you can see with this list, there's a lot of things on it. We kind of put them in order, but some of them have been moved on there. But this area is a priority on. Any questions?
Got a couple of questions. Comments first. Thank you. This is helpful, particularly as we start to do the comprehensive plan, kind of the squeeze in there. Perfectly others, something for us to consider. Random comments. I suspect this is still in draft. I would think through time bounding and budgeting these items. And it makes me wonder, something for consideration for council, to put a honorable mention as long-term financial, the long-term financial strategy, and have that labeled as an honorable mention.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't compute for me. When I add these items up, I'm looking at 15, 20 million bucks. That's peer sidewalk under ground utilities. You take the last 10 years of the town, we've netted, well, 3 of the last 10 years we're underwater. 1 year we were flat. We've netted $6.5 million over 10 years, which is a far cry from these items. Yeah. Granted, there are grants and other subsidies that could come into play, but this, without putting the financial strategy as a must-do, this quickly turns into a wish list. So it's just a suggestion out there, and that will be helpful for us as it relates to the comprehensive plan to see when things gate in and the sequencing of some of these items. So just my
Well,
own personal suggestion.
we will, it's important to me to have that, I agree with you. But when we were deciding what's most important to do and that, it kind of fell a little lower, but it doesn't mean you can not do it. I agree with
I agree with Alex.
you.
It's, yeah, just another random comment, don't necessarily need to reply or. It looks like the must do 2 of the 3 will be wrapped up in 2020. Some assumptions there, here, and town hall location and communication, and perhaps even morale, and think that they're items.
Well, the town hall, I don't see wrapped up for several years. Because it's gonna take a while to get the plans, and we also, with up to money that we spent, I don't, it may be a wrong call for doing it.
Okay, so with that, 75% of the must do's are 18-month items. So it seems that there may be room to move some of these other ones up to must do.
Well, they just took this as in group area. They wanted to do 1 to 3 months before thing that Charlie from MASC came in and did with us. And he had, what's your top 3? And of course, that's where they did. Mhm. Anybody else? Well, thank you. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
you know,
Appreciate it. Okay, now we're to the public hearing. Public hearing on proposed amendment to chapter 17 to include article 4, section 17-419 to prohibit medical cannabis establishments from operating in the town of Surfside Beach. So I'll open that up for public comment. And I'll also say we have Chief Hoffman here. He's very astute to this, did a presentation last month concerning this from a public safety or police perspective. So if you want to ask him any questions, feel free.
Can you recap what he said?
Can you come to the podium for me, please, sir? Just use some exercise. Just name and address.
Terry Cullen, 913 South Hollywood Lawn, Surfside Beach. Interested in what the chief had to say and what his high level recap of that was. Fortunately, I wasn't here last time, so I was very interested in what he had to say.
Okay, anything in particular you want, or just a general overview? You can do it.
Yes, nothing in particular.
Okay.
Very impressed high level thoughts on what he
Probably
has.
probably got a cliff notes version over there.
We'll take a little minute to get through this.
Mr. Altman, can you actually provide any changes from here and that your recap from there? I know a lot of has happened with that bill also.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to give you guys Ms. Cullen, I'll just give a quick legislative update, if that's okay, and then I'll recap kind of what I told the commission previously. Is that okay? Thank you. So for the commission's update on this, the Compassionate Care Act continues to move through our state legislature. It has passed its 3rd reading in the Senate and has had its 1st reading in the House and has been referred to the Committee on Medical, Military, Public, and Municipal Affairs. And that happened on February 15th, and there it remains for consideration. All indications are, and you've been doing some research on this as well, I think that this has a lot of momentum in the state. It's got a pretty good chance of passing through the House. And then it'll just be up to the governor if he decides to sign and move this thing forward. Of interest and kind of in line with part of what I mentioned the last time we spoke, and kind of told you what I believe will be the progression of this legislative action would be the state has already legalized hemp manufacturing and production related to that. Now we're looking at medical marijuana, and then, as I told you, the next step behind that would be recreational marijuana right behind it. In this session 124, State Bill 335, a bill to decriminalize marijuana and provide for the regulation of marijuana, specifically to provide for the personal use of marijuana, the amounts that a person at least 21 years of age may legally possess, to provide that marijuana may not be consumed in locations that prohibit smoking of tobacco, and it continues on. That was introduced January 12th, 21. January 19th of this year, Senate Bill 995, joint resolution to provide for a statewide advisory referendum to be held at the same time as the 2022 general election to determine whether the qualified electors of this state favor legalization of marijuana for medicinal and recreational use purposes. South Carolina, it's right behind it. State Bill 268, that was last year, same thing. It was introduced last year, but died, and so they brought it back this year. So, excuse me, my allergies are getting me. I do believe that this has a pretty good bit of a momentum. Mr. Cullen, to your point, what I talked about with the Planning Commission last time was my concerns as the chief of police, along with all of the law enforcement executives in the 15th Judicial Circuit all share this opinion that the passing of marijuana legislation will produce a public safety impact. How measurable is that? I could give you 100 studies and 50 would say one thing and 50 would say the other, like most other statistical surveys. There are studies out there that make me concerned about the impact on hospitalization, as we spoke about, possible impacts on crime, how that might affect dropout rates from school, how vehicle accidents have increased in states where legalized marijuana has taken place. And we also talked about how that will impact our community here in Surfside Beach. I'm not going to yell fire in the theater here and say that crime is going to go out of control. There's no indication that the passing of marijuana, whether medical or recreational, is going to create a tremendous spike in violent crime. And we enjoy very low crime rates here in Surfside Beach, and my goal is to keep it that way. I've seen a lot of the comments online, as you have too, and the comments that were made were in support of legalization of marijuana for certain purposes. And I want to make it clear to the commission and to the people here in attendance tonight that I'm not a doctor, and I don't dispute possible potential medical benefits to certain people who could benefit from THC and the effects of it on certain medical conditions. I'm not disputing that. What I do think is that there's a better way to administer THC. It exists in pill form now, Marisol, where it doesn't need to be distributed in a compressed liquid form to be vaporized and ingested into the body in that form. So the real question is, does the family beach, Surfside Beach, want to have initially out of the gate medical marijuana dispensaries here in our town and take the chance of what type of behavior that may bring with it? We can't stop it in other jurisdictions. We may not be able to stop it in the state. The difficult task for the commission and for our town council members, depending on what your findings are, if you pass this amendment, is just whether Surfside Beach wants to be a location where people from outside Surfside Beach or even inside can go to a marijuana dispensary and obtain the liquid form of THC to vaporize it and inhale it. That really is the question. Is that in the comprehensive plan for the development and the future of Surfside Beach? I know it's a difficult question and backs the commission into a corner. I was glad to see some of the comments because it's important to know where our citizens stand on this. But there was very few comments, in my opinion, based on how important this is. Maybe there was a dozen comments, I think, that in response to the posting that the town made and in favor of this. So I guess to summarize your question, Colin, I remain concerned that the pending legislation could have a public safety impact on the town of Surfside Beach moving forward. Our resources are already strained. There's tremendous turnover in law enforcement right now. We're struggling like every other agency in the country to keep our ranks filled with officers right now at a time when it is not a favorable time to be a police officer in the United States of America. Like other agencies, we are also struggling with recruiting and retaining police officers here. Our resources are going to be strained going into the summer. Our resources are going to be further strained once the pier and e-district is fully operational and running. And I would ask that the commission carefully consider this amendment in a way that protects the residents and citizens and our visitors, our children, and maintains a family beach environment that the council has recently established, that they have a vision to be the #1 family destination in the state. I'm on board with that 100%, and we'll move forward with the initiatives that they establish. But I don't think that it's in the best interest of public safety to have marijuana dispensaries here in the town of Surfside Beach. I will tell you this. Like anything else, if you want to get to the root of something, as I said before also, follow the money. The legislation breaks down specifically how, pages here, the money sign here, section 4453/2020. The department shall establish the medical cannabis program fund. Revenues generated in excess of the amount needed to implement, administer, and enforce this article must be annually distributed as follows. 3% for the research conducted by University of South Carolina College of Pharmacy and School of Medicine, or both, or the Medical University of South Carolina, or both, for research to improve detection and training methods to detect drivers impaired by cannabis, prescription medications, and other drugs, until SLED affirms that no additional research is needed. 3%. 10% to local providers operating under the auspices of Act 301/1973 for purposes related to alcohol and drug abuse prevention, education, early intervention, and treatment. 5% to the state law enforcement division. 2% to the South Carolina Department of Education to be used for drug safety education. 75% to the state's general fund. 5% for research conducted by the University of South Carolina College of Pharmacy, so on and so forth, to be approved by the department to be used in conjunction with medical cannabis research and development. I didn't see anything in there about any of it going back to local municipalities who will be dealing with the public safety impact of this to help support the efforts of keeping intoxicated and drug drivers off of our streets, to provide extra police officers for any crime that comes along with this, may or may not, depending on what research you read, could have no effect, could have a big effect. The research indicates that crime that may be related to the medical marijuana dispensaries is going to be neighborhood related. It's going to affect the neighborhoods around these dispensaries. If you put a dispensary anywhere in this town, it's going to affect the neighborhood around this dispensary, which is our residential area here in town. So you can, however, as a municipality, if you decide and council decides to allow this medical cannabis program to take place in the town, a local option sales tax can be implemented, which may help to offset some of that as well. But I do think that if this passes and we have a dispensary in town, there will be some impact. What it will be, we don't really know until it happens. But I would just ask that you be careful and consider what you want to move forward with that. Answer your questions.
Yes, Chief, thank you very much.
Let me ask you a question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
We currently have CBD shops.
Right.
With what we would recommend, if we recommended no, how does that affect these current CBD shops?
I don't believe it would. That might be a better question for you. Yeah, that would not affect the current CBD.
Am I correct in that what you told us last time, that the head of every law enforcement agency around in the Grants County area came out and wrote a letter and signed the letter to Congress asking them not to pass this?
On January 27th, 2022, our solicitor, Jimmy Richardson, penned a letter to all of our senators here in South Carolina in reference to this bill and urged them to oppose this bill. And it was signed by all law enforcement officials. A couple were absent, but signed it later. All of the law enforcement heads of every law enforcement agency in the 15th Judicial Circuit signed this document. So I'm not alone here. The people who really care about public safety around this circuit, including your solicitor, are very concerned about what the effects will be.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. I've detected a lot of confusion in people I've talked to. We are looking at a zoning ordinance that prohibits establishments connected with medical marijuana.
Right.
Am I correct that if this legislation passes in Columbia, and what it says right here in the legislation, that a local government may prohibit medical cannabis establishments from operating in the jurisdiction? There is nothing in anything we're doing that prohibits a legally qualified patient from using it.
That's right.
I'm getting a lot of stories about poor grandma pain. We're not saying she can't use it. We're just saying that it's going to be outside of it.
Thank you for that clarification. That's a great point. We're not, if it passes in the state, we're not saying people can't get the help that that's what is prescribed by a physician and a pharmacist at one of these dispensaries dispenses it. It's not illegal to possess this, but we're just saying maybe we don't want to have a dispensary here. It's really what we're saying.
Is it possible, is it even in the realm of possibility? I keep looking at the nightmare of Orange County prohibits medical cannabis establishments, and the town says it's okay. All of a sudden, everybody in Orange County coming to Family Beach. That is impossible.
They call that drug tourism.
Yeah.
I agree, and I can't confirm it, but I believe that you'll find that other municipalities and jurisdictions in the area are working on similar zoning regulations.
Let me pause here for a second. We'll take this back to the public for public comments, and we'll have our, if that's okay, because it is a public hearing, so more public comments concerning anything that she said or Passionate Care Act?
I'm Linda Thing, 20 10th Avenue South. I'm usually up here talking about trees. It's a different form of tree, I guess. I think the statement here on your agenda, if this is all you're going to put in there, is a little too brief. I think the idea of controlling or discussing it is probably a good plan. The point I want to make is that we're talking strictly about medical. It sounds like we need to talk about recreation. A lot of the shops that are in town already have already got themselves prone and ready to go. We all know that for the recreation. You can also get to the point too with the medical marijuana that you could limit the number of establishments. I come from a state many years ago, but they limited the number of liquor stores that you could have in the city limits. And it's still a law. And you could certainly limit it. I believe there is a need for the general public for the health. There are people who really have learned and have gone to other states where they can get it, medical marijuana in some form. It's not always liquid and you're not always vaporizing it. There's all kinds of ways that it can be gotten. I don't think we could be left isolated here and say that we're going to be the medical marijuana capital of South Carolina, but I think this is oversimplified, and I think it should address recreational. I can understand that, and I certainly appreciate and respect Chief Hoffman's study and overview and all the law enforcement. Yeah, sure, that can happen. But I think we should also think about, unfortunately, maybe some of us have not been affected by the need for medical marijuana. But for those folks that I've been around, it's a relief. And you're going to let the people go across the street in the shopping center and open up a medical marijuana. Whereas I would rather have it in here directly in the city limits where Chief Hoffman and his officers are going to be checking it and making sure that it's right and done properly. So I think this is an oversimplified statement. You can make a recommendation, and I don't think the council would act on it quite like this, but maybe you should address recreational establishments rather than medical. Because like Chief Hoffman said, it's all coming down the track together. And, public opinion may carry some weight, but I have no idea. None of us do. But thank you.
Good evening, my name is Gary Livesey. I'm the same address she is. And I want to kind of reaffirm her statement. And I have a lot of respect for Chief Hoffman and his outlook and all of law enforcement in South Carolina. But I would say this whole issue is an issue where it's like trying to hold back a freight train. And I'd say it'd be hard pressed, Chief, to find hard data. Now, I will agree on the community. That would be, you got to keep it clean if you have license. But the licensed dispensaries, that's a medical question. That's not a law enforcement question. It's not an ethical question. It's a medical question. And we have medical directors who prescribe pharmaceuticals. That's a legal right. And it's a citizen's right to access that. My wife and I know more than two. Matter of fact, we know several people who suffered from cancer and have found great relief with medical marijuana, marijuana derivatives. And they even smoke marijuana. It doesn't have to be derivatives. We all dance around all these words. We all know what we're talking about. So I would say, for Surfside, say we're not having any licensed places in town. I think you're a little behind the times here. So I would say let's get the licensed places and let's control it. To me, it's your only option. But to say, oh, we're not gonna have any, well, let's take that one, and I'm being a little bit, dramatic here, but you got CVS over here, and you got an opioid problem in town too. What are you gonna do with CVS? That's a logical conclusion you can come to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are we gonna do with prohibiting liquors? My God, how many drunk driving accidents? They close those guys. But it's that kind of argument. Let's get this thing done, be a progressive town, takes care of our citizens, faces facts, use facts, not the boogeyman. Use facts as your issue and understand that this whole issue is, this is a train that's left the station. So let's move forward in life and let's license it. Maybe control the number of licenses. Hey, there's a good suggestion. Maybe you could control that. That'll make one or two people very wealthy. And we'll make one or two politicians real close friends with those wealthy people. So, and that's the way the system works. So let's make it work. Let's control that and make it safe and keep a good, clean, tight, nice community. That's what we got. Do this guy's work, the Public Works Department, and the council, everybody works to make the town nice. It's pretty nice. Let's do this and try and keep it there. And let's honor our citizens. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, thank you for your comments. We will move on to our discussion item. Chief, you can hang around or?
I'll loiter a little bit.
Okay, thank you. You got it, thank you for coming. Discussion item, Article 4 of the town zoning ordinance / supplemental regulations.
Council, as Councilman Holder stated tonight, has directed staff to review and amend the ordinances as necessary. They're antiquated or difficult to understand. You guys want everyone to understand and not have to interpret what you read. It's very plain. Staff recently met with the owner of a parcel in the E district. He was really upset because we had to deny him approval of a request that he had presented to the town because of the requirements set forth in the parking in the E district. Parking has been an issue in the town for many years in all areas of town, and because of the property owner's concern, staff thought that we should, and as well as the administration, thought that we should begin with Article 4 and the supplemental regulations, which address all the parking requirements within the town, as well as other supplemental regulations that we definitely need to look at. And maybe there's some areas that we can just get rid of, and there's others we need to add to. The comprehensive plan, in your issue paper, there's a long list of, basically, the comprehensive plan mostly addresses public parking, not on-site parking. I can tell you the owner of this business wanted to eliminate his parking and put something that's user-friendly, pedestrian-friendly on the parking lot, and we had to deny him because under the section of the code, and you have this in your packet, on page 8 of 21 of the current ordinance, he would fall under T. There could be no parking requirement, he wouldn't fall under T. There could be no parking requirements for any parcel that is currently occupied by a structure. He would fall under F. Any lots containing parking areas for existing businesses relinquish the right to develop the area devoted to parking until such time as parking is provided elsewhere by the business owner, property owner meeting the requirements of this chapter. His argument is you're allowed some in that same district to have no parking and to eliminate that parking, but you're making me keep mine. So we're not for or against, but we certainly think it's worth looking at and worth researching. But not just that section. We brought this because he has a concern and it does need to be addressed one way or the other. But other areas of town, there's some businesses in town now that they're old, they built several years ago, and the parking requirements at that time was basically every planning conference you go to, they say, people plan and require parking for Black Friday. You don't need that much parking, but how much parking do you need? And we really need to look at each use, each area of the town, and design our parking requirements and not a cut and paste, which is basically what this is in most of the area. We need to look at our town and see what fits each commercial district. And it's certainly going to be another issue when you start going into the comprehensive plan, the new comprehensive plan, where you may want to consider the mixed use district, what's appropriate for the parking, what's not. I know at the last meeting, I think we had discussed, there was a concern of a resident Poplar, because one side is commercial, which is the most liberal in town, and the other side is residential. Well, we need to look at that, maybe propose a down zoning for neighborhood commercial and what's allowed there, and then decide if the parking should be less than what you would require on NC1, which is 117. So I wanted to at least put it in the packet, ask that the commission read it, consider it, send any remarks or any comments you might want us to look at, because we are going to be working on this within the next several months and hopefully have it presented to council. Because I think it certainly needs to be looked at across the board. I know the parking committee is looking at the where they're looking at all the public parking. But I think we should challenge ourselves to look at the private parking. There's some that should be reduced, and there's some that should be maybe considered greater based on the zoning district. And if you have any questions, I'll answer.
Is there any consideration for the business?
And it used to be, at one time, it was, if you, or let's say a grocery store, you look at the grocery store and it says, yes, you have to have, and it does, and then say per square footage, you gotta have so many parking. And that's where you really need to look at it. When you're looking at a smaller building, and you're actually, perfect example, I was reading the past minutes from Ms. Coleman, and she's talking about Sandy Lane and the warehouses and what may not be appropriate. If you actually look into this, a warehouse or even service industry on Sandy Lane, almost every lot there would not hold what's allowed there because of the parking requirement. So I think a lot of this can be reduced. I agree, we need parking, but we need it based on what the use of it should be looked at for that reason. So, it's definitely, it's got the attention of this property owner who has contacted other property owners that we're hearing from. So I think it's certainly worth reviewing.
Is there a way that we get a list of businesses, parking spaces that they have for themselves, and maybe cross-reference what would be required today? So the question is, for the business owner who brought this to you, what was the expectation set with him or her?
Well, his expectations and his request was to not require parking in the E district because of the precedent has already been set. So he wants to eliminate parking on private property in the E district.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. What did we do? Tell him that we would do?
I did not offer, I just said we would review it and he was welcome to come in during public input and participate in this meeting. He's not here, but we didn't give him any kind of expectations of what may or may not happen. We just said we would bring it and have it reviewed.
Well, for what it's worth, I get it. So I was one business owner down there, why am I required? But carry dirt. If I was another business owner, then you could be a stone's throw from one another. So it's certainly some different rules based upon the timing of when the business was established and what circumstances were there. Sorry, one more question. So on the matrix here of the parking spaces required, there's things like one space for each 4 seats. So I would assume that's like a restaurant.
Right,
You got 4 seats.
exactly.
But there's other requirements for square footage. You've got next number of square feet. You need. So is there a way to, so if I'm a restaurant, which of these apply to me? Greatest of?
And actually this, and I apologize, I should have put it in the back. But the parking codes correlate with the permitted uses in each zoning district. So at the next meeting, I'll give you both. It's a chart, it's based on the use. But again, there's a lot, even a restaurant that's based on square footage. I mean, we have some in the business district right now, and they did write an overlay, that we do have an overlay district that exempted, removed the parking requirements. And I'm glad they did, because we have restaurants now that opened after the overlay that did not meet these requirements and that would not have opened had that overlay not been there. So landscaping supersedes parking. These older buildings, if we're going to hold steadfast to these parking requirements, we are going to have major problems filling these shopping centers and any vacant property.
Yeah, I think the key is being consistent. We're not consistent now. You talk about the business district, there is no parking requirement.
You're exactly
In
right.
another business district, it is.
Right, the central business district on Surfside Drive currently requires no parking. The E district requires certain parcels to have parking and others not. So you're right, it needs to be, I think it needs to be looked at, but not just those districts, others.
One of the things I want to make sure that we consider when we're reviewing this is future use of these lots. Just because someone's building something or putting something today to do a certain use, it doesn't mean that's what it's going to be when the owner steps in. So I don't want to tie it to, I'd rather tie it to, I think it'd be smarter to tie it to district than it would be to business type. Because we can't govern what it's going to be, when it's going to be. And
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, excuse me, because that's why I'm so happy the overlay does exempt the parking as opposed to landscaping. Because some of these that have put new businesses in, they were restaurants before, they were just general offices, and they turned into restaurants, which will never have the required parking. So we would have had to deny it. And we don't want to limit who certain businesses on 17 because of parking requirements, or in any area. Definitely needs to be looked at. But I will get you I'll stay, if we're working with someone with a contractor to get us the new zoning maps, and they do have aerials, so we'll try to get the parking that's there now and on each lot. Sure.
Basically, you just want us to review this section and we'll be on the agenda for our next meeting, or we make recommendations in between now and then.
Yes, any recommendation or anything you could come up with looking at this, it'll be on the next agenda for additional review. I'll do some research on parking as well and the small towns and what they require. And I'll present it next.
Any other questions? All right. Next item is, we're going to continue to discuss Surfside Beach's comprehensive plan. The next, actually, we're got us on page 48, which covers the cultural resources element. As we've discussed before, a lot of information in here. Basically, what this covers, the cultural resources element, this just gives us a breakdown of the history of Surfside Beach. You know, we were incorporated in 1964, goes back to the art plantation, Roaching Beach, Floral Beach. It was basically reopened, obviously. We were shot in the arm for this community as far as development. It just shows you a lot of the civic organizations, Surfside Beach special events. Gives us a table of our special events. And like I say, these are 11 years old. So obviously we need to update these events. Yes, ma'am.
Off the top of my head, it seems to me that goal one should be like helpful to building celebrating community. I see a lot more of that going on in the basically like the Surfside Beach. If we're going to call farmers market.
Yeah,
but this seems to imply, I mean, the 1D really, talked about an opportunity to sell and market goods and services.
Arts and crafts.
Yeah, I think we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you go to page 57, you talk about historic preservation. You know, we've done a lot of that. So a lot of what's in this, we have made strides to improve and to get better, promote. It says organize cultural events, programs that fit the family beach tradition of Surfside Beach. Develop programs to meet the interests of both children and older residents. I'm going to read this, although Surfside Beach oftentimes is regarded as a seasonal community. We all know better than that. Access to potential of providing cultural event programming throughout the entire year. I think we've done a lot of that. Added events, a couple of events monthly. Engaging local business, community, and all special events, provide them the opportunity to sell and market their goods and services. Go back to the ensure that all eligible entities are well aware of potential funding available through the accommodation tax fund. I do think with the new website that could be very helpful for people knowing that there is funds out there, tax funds that are collected by the town, and how we qualify. I served on the ATAX commission for a couple of years, and there was a lot of money available, but very few people made application. And that's just another educating tool that we can, much like the side thing, trying to promote it, trying to get people to use some government money. Promote initiatives to research and preserve landmarks and historical events in the Surfside Beach area. So it sounds repetitive, but I'm just kind of reading what this comp plan is saying, that I feel like we've done a very good job. While we're not Georgetown, I think we hold our own. Conduct an inventory of local structures that may qualify for the National Registry of Historic Places within the next 10 to 20 years.
Have we done any of it?
You guys took care of a bunch of them. Identify sites that may be appropriate for recognition via the South Carolina Historical Marker Program.
Did that?
Yep, we've done that. Identify community facilities such as the Lee County Library to display rotating exhibits and galleries depicting local history of the area.
Have they done that?
I had a question more about that. I wasn't sure about that, but we'll check on that one. Utilize and recently created Certified Beach Historical Board to identify potential historic structures, noteworthy events, people, and other items of historical interest in Surfside Beach.
Well, that next one is basically, should be part of the header,
Yeah,
because the 2D did everything, 2A, B, and C, but
right. Exactly. So, cultural resources goal 3, promote Surfside Beach pier, the surrounding district as a major landmark for cultural and social activities in the community. Yeah, I think that's, I think we've done that. Develop programs and community events to promote ongoing activities, even for the season, that. Obviously, the peer committee is, install information kiosks near the peer area to provide visitor interpretive signing about Surfside Beach, directions to other towns, and promote upcoming events.
put that on their to-do list.
Yeah, and I think that could be part of the wayfinding signs. When you pull it up on your phone, I want to get to eat, and give you 10 different restaurants, give you the addresses, or I want to get a movie or get a haircut. So, yeah, we're working on that. Initiate a public art program with Surfside Beach theme and around your district.
Done last week.
Great example, obviously, is the mural on Surfside Drive. So,
New one on Nealon Park, Hamstown. Randy just finished
Really?
on the side.
No excuse to get out of it. All business related. Coordinate cultural event programming and marketing on both the local and regional level. Seek a partnership with local nonprofit cultural arts organizations such as the Long Bay Symphony, Waccamaw Arts and Crafts Guild to host regular events in town. Yeah, that's a great idea, but don't really have a host site. Yeah. Work with other entities, Lee County, Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce to coordinate event calendars, events on each other's respective website. I do think we can do a better job. As Mr. Paul said, we're working a little closer with the chamber. These business after hours, I think that was the third one in 10 years. I think those ought to be semi-annual at worst, especially during the off season. I guarantee there's a lot of restaurants in town or bars or whatever that would love to have 100 people there on a Tuesday night in February. So, yeah, that's a given. Like I told them, you got food and alcohol, they will come. They will come. All right. Any, I went over the highlighted areas in that section. Any questions or additional comments?
I think if we're going sequentially, we skipped over natural resources, which is fine. You're on a roll there. I think when we do work with the consultant on the comprehensive plan, this area here, 14 different goals, seeking to call out something that resembles the word for certified. So my magic wand would be erase all of this stuff. Some of it's done, some of it's just so vague and not even applicable today. And focus in on a very small number of things, particularly the last couple of things in row 1, 5, 6, partnering with others, in commerce, some regional events, et cetera. The first half of this whole section here is more filler rather than actionable. Yeah.
Well, I think we've obviously, just from what we've gone through, we found probably 50 pages cut out of the, we're about halfway through. So then you told me today that Little Beach went from 300 pages to 60 pages on the top one. Every page costs quite a bit. So
Plus anybody.
the more we can minimize this, I'm not saying we just start deleting things, but
The reason nobody ever read it may be that it's big.
trying to find natural resources out. Where did I miss that?
Well, it's just a spreadsheet, essentially.
Right before closure,
Just before the.
page before.
You go off the spreadsheet with the goals, it starts at row 51, the spreadsheet document, not the actual one.
I got you.
Check that next time.
Well, there's part of the comp plan, so now you know what we're working with. They're talking about the climate, and we've got all that figured out. Floodplain, obviously wildlife and vegetation. We've done a lot of improvement on our drainage systems, obviously more to come. We've worked on our flood mitigation, our education, our community rating system is now improved because of things that the staff has done over the years. Flood insurance is cheaper. Yeah.
Didn't we almost lose our CRS rate? So that was almost happened.
It's still may happen,
Yeah. So
but we are working now. We started in January to increase the activity.
we're a number.
We're 5 now.
COVID time period tempered some traditional activity.
Yeah, I think a lot of these we've done a better job investigating where appropriate implement riprap buffer requirements for areas immediately adjacent to lakes where feasible, provide incentive to encourage voluntary planning, require maintenance and access easements for all new subdivisions, development adjacent to lakes, continually monitor water levels, prepare long-term dredging costs at the town's capital budget, continue to fund improvements to passive recreation and viewing areas along the lake shore. We must done that, continue to raise awareness of the lake's purpose, rules of use through operational signing, monitor new invasive plants and animal species. We talk about these, continue to require mandatory connections to public water and sewer, new developments, refine provisions that prohibit illicit discharge into the town's lakes and drainage systems, ensure that all new development and construction activities adhere to standards of National Discharge Pollution Elimination System, encourage low impact development practices where appropriate, encourage use of riprap buffers, bioswales, rain gardens, pervious pavements. We've been doing a lot of our parking lots for those.
We tried to do something with the vegetative buffer. Several years ago, and it didn't get very far. Didn't get very far. But people make for pregnant to the lake.
Yeah. And other green initiatives to reduce runoff pollutants. Access, feasibility, and benefits, expanding the volunteer water quality monitoring program to include additional sampling sites in Surfside Beach. Brenda, you can probably touch on some of these. These are things that we have done, are doing, have implemented. You know, stormwater, but as far as the riprap and everything, it's like building a lot. Is that required everywhere in town or just near a lake?
No, it's everywhere. And I know our stormwater committee's looking at rain gardens and the buffers and glass wells. I think they have discussed bringing back the council the buffer on the lakes. It did not go well last time, but they come back. And then other green initiatives they're looking at.
Obviously, we'll continue with cooperation from Horry County and a subsequent update from county's multiple jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. I do believe that is something that probably needs to be revisited.
It was just readopted last year. They rewrote the entire.
With 600 new homes going across the street.
I absolutely agree with you.
And we got 272s coming into Lake Elizabeth. That's the only contract. That's the 70-30 contract just on Elizabeth Lake. Nowhere else. So that ends at Cedar.
That's right.
No, wait a minute. It's just double.
Oh,
you're on, by the way.
Yeah, Elizabeth runs into trouble.
Yeah.
okay. So you were.
Well, it's really one body of water.
Okay.
I will send you a copy.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I mean, because that, you're right. I mean, the sediment really has no filtration out of Lake Elizabeth. It really has no filtration out of Lake Dogwood. The only way to get it out is the dredge. You know, other, you know, we've done a good job as far as the vegetation coming off of Dogwood, over Palmetto, and some of our other lakes. And we got a lot of those lakes dredged, 2006, 5, 6, Cherry Lake, Holly Lake. Yeah, so a lot of those were done.
Well, Dogwood hasn't been dredged since the town bought it in 2001, so God knows everything.
I think the challenge was trying to figure out how to dredge. The expense of floating a barge out there with a crane was not cheap.
Doesn't mean it doesn't need dredging.
Oh, I agree. Because if you remember, we had those bags, they had to fill them up, leave them, those so, then they had to come pick them up, take them to the landfill. Yeah, it's not an easy process.
Just the garbage, I have a little bit of a hook in there in the lake, and the garbage that get collects in there, it's way down the lake, I can't even imagine what it's all about. My neighbor told me he found where old beach balls go to die. Whole pile of blue plastic.
Yeah, and. Yeah. Yeah, continuing our multi-jurisdictional plan with the county, continue to provide local enforcement, building codes, thus ensuring that new construction meets the coastal wind zone requirements of the International Building Code, and International Residential Code. Investigate the feasibility of local warning systems, i.e. tornadoes, tsunamis. Feel safe. Continue to upgrade and retrofit existing town infrastructure as funding permits. Provide local incentives and seek grant assistance to help property owners upgrade and retrofit existing structures. Explain that in layman's terms for me. Provide local incentives and seek grant assistance to help property owners upgrade or retrofit.
Well, if you're in a flood zone and you, obviously, we go out and look at, if you call us and ask us, what can I do to prevent flooding from my home? We go out, we meet you on site, we walk around and tell you what you can and can't take, elevate. Obviously, that's an issue. I mean, that's one of the options, especially if they're below flood. FEMA offers a grant up to, right now, it's $30,000 to help that property owner elevate.
Okay.
So, and we give them the information, we walk them through the process. I know one in the town that has gotten that grant. But we encourage it, especially for those that do not meet the flood requirement. We have some we've met, in fact, within the last month, we've met one that is slab on grade and asked, what can I do? The only option there is to elevate or anything. But we do that a lot. We offer FEMA is very good at walking you through the grant process.
We're continuing to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Standards require raised elevation for flood proofing of impacted structures. Participating in the community rating system program that helps reduce insurance rates. Continuing to protect the town's dunes and encourage their restoration. Continue enforcement and refinement of the town's stormwater management ordinance. Encourage, where appropriate, require the use of pervious pavement materials. Like I said, we've been doing a lot of the parking lots with that. Seems to be working a lot better than concrete or asphalt. Limit the area or percentage of impervious surface through zoning and stormwater management standards. Require landscape buffers, breaks, swales within large parking lots to reduce the impact of flow. Establish reasonable setbacks for structures adjacent to drainage facilities or the town's lakes. Ensure the town staff receives adequate training in floodplain management issues by encouraging certification through the floodplain management program. So doing that, maintain and refine as needed zoning standards which protect town specimen significant trees. Running listening to me. Require minimum tree planting and retention thresholds for new development projects. Increase the enforcement staff's ability to identify significant trees and species, thus increasing their ability to assist property owners in the identification and tagging of these assets. I think we've conducted a comprehensive inventory of specimen and significant trees.
We have not, but the stormwater committee is going to request the funding to do that. We have
Ensure that new public projects incorporate native planting. We talked about that before. Requiring certain trees in areas they're just not indigenous to grow. I think we fixed a lot of that. Continue the town's participation in the Tree City USA program. Hopefully we're back on path. Continue to follow and promote best practices in tree management, care, disease prevention, and mitigation. All right. Now to cultural and natural resource element.
Community facilities.
Any questions about as far as tree requirements and the flooding and the signage and what we're doing or what we can do better? I know we still have a few hot spots in town as far as flooding. Only so much you can do as far as spending money. You know, I know when we were looking at trying to do the engineering, and you can engineer for 100 or maybe a 200-year storm, but 500-year storm, you can't do it. And that's just millions and millions of dollars. So, the fact that we contain an inch of rainfall on our lots now and doing our swales and stuff, that's certainly going to help. The same requirements, those same requirements are in the commercial district also. That's correct.
Yeah.
So there's really no, you have to do what you do in residential, you have to do in commercial.
That's exactly.
And most of these things should be classified as ongoing. That'd be a good
I
term.
think so. I think
Yeah, I would agree.
those are implemented and we're continuing to do those.
It's not one and done. It's gonna be ongoing. Forever.
I did attend a conference not a few weeks ago for FEMA, for floodplain management. And they had a lot of great information, but one of the, and I took a picture of the slide, I thought it was really interesting because we do have a lot of people, actually at the class, some of the municipalities, of course, from other states, did not have building code. And so you had no inspections, you had nothing. And one of the slides says that the hazard resistant building code are projected to prevent $132 billion in losses. And then, of course, in our side, it's more stringent because you have to go with coastal enforcement. That's a plus.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Maybe an opportunity here, there's 40 goals, just to get these over to the stormwater committee and let them take a look, see if there are particular ones that surface as priorities for them, or maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah.
When we enter into the contract. I'm happy to take that if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. town's input, something we gotta have to get this right. So. All right,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I
sir.
mean, what is the plan of getting the committee's input? Is that just something we're going to request one-on-one, or our committee's going to request that from them? Is Sabrina taking care of that? Is it being worked on now? When should we get that input? I think we probably should make a plan for us to go ahead and start gathering. Thank you.
Since I agree with you, but I know when the consultant comes in, they're gonna actually meet with all the committees that's involved in the comp plan. At that time, the consultant could certainly make that meeting with the planning commission, because obviously, you're the one that's gonna make all of our recommendations to the council. So I would certainly recommend that any of the committees meet with the planning commission. And the consultant will certainly, give you that option.
Thank you.
Okay. One more section. Community facilities element. Basically, this goes through our municipal buildings and municipal structures, how the town operates. It's legislative and administrative body. Council is responsible for passing ordinance, establish town policy, and key personnel such as the administrative town clerk and town attorney. There's some staff. This explains a lot about planning and zoning, municipal court, finance. Talks about our fire stations. Not new anymore, built in 2010, but it's new to us. Police station built in 1996. It was kind of a deal with, not a deal, but when Branch County Water and Sewer took over our water and sewer, that's why they built the new fire station. I mean, the new police station. Sorry, you didn't want it. Thanks to all our citizens, boards and committees, ATAX, Board of Zoning Appeals, Election Commission, Planning Commission, Stormwater, Keep Surfside Beach Beautiful, Senior Citizens Committee, Recreation and Special Events. I'm sure we still have. Surfside Beach Business Committee, Parking Committee, Surfside Beach Historical Board, Grand Strand Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. Names all of our parks. Fuller Park, Martin Park, Martin Field, Hudson Beach Complex, All Children's Park, Cassett Park, Clark Park, and Dickman Johnson Civic Center. There's the water and sewer services by National Water and Sewer, electrical by St. Cooper. This is our medical facilities in town and public school. Police department, some of the highlights here: continue to maintain state law enforcement accreditation. I'm sure that's happening. Maintain a quality police force through the selection and retention of personnel. Perform a salary compensation study to aid in recruitment and selection. Perform demographics and service demand study for staffing requirements. Obviously, all hit on replacing of fleet vehicles. That's always been a challenge, rotating those police cars. 3 on the road, 9 sitting. Always always been kind of a sensitive thing. Well, how does this come by? This shit has been brought. They can't run them 24/7. You could, but then your turnover is going to be great. Upgrade equipment and facilities as budget constraints permit. Yeah. Perform a facility study to explore expansion and retrofit current facility. Not sure we're even there yet. Replace vehicle vehicles, complete uniform transition. Fire department, increase fire staffing. I think we talked about that, safer grant. Obviously, we just got a budget for that. The 4th year, obviously it helps with our ISO, more full-time employees we have at the fire station. Continue equipment replacements and upgrades. I think we've done that. We've gotten 2 new trucks. Is that about right?
A new fire truck.
Yeah.
That,
An emergency vehicle?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, command vehicle, yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing that full-time fire prevention, public education officer. What do we have one of those?
We don't public information.
Do we have a fire?
Oh, fire.
Oh, well, a public education officer, slash.
Educate on fire.
We do have a, council approved a full-time fire marshal, which is certainly be out and about and educating. That's a plus, yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
Talking about the public library expansion that happened in 2010 there, that increased that facility, by 14,000 square feet. That was touch and go for a while, so I'm glad we got that done. Senior Center down 10th Avenue North. And I think a lot of these things too, continue to provide a forum to receive resident comments during town council meetings. Develop a standard system of collecting, reporting, and addressing residents' comments, complaints, and suggestions. I would think that new website will certainly help with that. Continue the use of citizen boards and advisory committees to provide input. Town council and administrator on major policy and public facility issues. We're doing that. Enhance town's use of its website. We're getting there.
Is that?
Yeah, it's in the works. Continue to improve and expand recycling initiatives as it is environmentally responsible and diverts waste from the landfill. Continue to resurface town roads on a priority basis. Continue stormwater improvements. Enhance water quality. Continue the efforts to improve the quality of the beach experience. Improving parking, working on that. Continue protection afforded to the town streets throughout the encroachment. Permitting requirements and the town's development regulations. Rethink and re-engineer the town's commitment to recreation activities and facilities that cross all age lines. Attract annual major arts and crafts shows, sales, exhibits, art in the park program. Encourage for peaceful, expand the use of the civic center. Can't do that. Review and expand the use of Huckabee Park. Not sure that's possible now. Was years ago, not anymore. Ensure that new public projects performed by outside public entities are reviewed by the town in accordance with regulations and state codes and the town development regulations. For the efforts of the Service Outreach Library to expand services while ensuring such activities are compatible with adjacent town parks and residential areas. Support joint efforts with Sandy Cooper, talking about infrastructure and underground wiring. That is an expensive action. I know when the first one we did was 14th Avenue South. And that was the cheapest one we could find in our pilot project. It was $450,000. That was 15 years ago. You should see the numbers. You're talking about the numbers for Ocean Boulevard. You seen the numbers for 17?
Yes.
Yes.
I think you need to read on.
What was that pilot program?
14 South.
When? You know, what year? I don't know.
2006,
I
7.
mean, technology keeps, maybe, is there anything, can they do it cheaper at this
No,
point?
it keeps going up.
Keeps going up.
According to Sandy Cooper.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because in the 14th looks good now, and all everything's underground, and all the street lights are there, and the sidewalk went over the top, so that was kind of the thought process years ago. If you're gonna do it in the residential area, bring a sidewalk behind it. The connectivity that we're talking about.
Does the town have to finance the entire thing, or, you know, can Santee Cooper or, you know, some of these cable companies?
It's a dollar for dollar match.
Oh, is it?
And you can borrow out for 3 years on the project.
Or like $100,000?
So you can do a project, yeah, they'll give you, yeah, but you gotta pay it back.
Gotcha.
Certainly looks good, but it's.
And I know every storm that comes along, there's power outages, but, you know, if a hurricane comes in, brings it all down. I don't know what the cost of repairing is, but, you know, all consider.
Yeah, I think that was the thought. It was done in the residential area. Then there was more focus on trying to get it more in the business district, downtown business district, businesses open. There's Ocean Boulevard with your businesses and some of your rental houses. So.
They have looked at, we have looked at some of the business district and Ocean Boulevard. We've got prices on it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's correct from 9 north to Melody Lane. We're talking about, what was it, $5 billion. And he's talking about what they pay to do a whole street. We're talking about from 9 north to Melody Lane, it's $5 million.
Yeah.
To do downtown, just to do our Ocean Boulevard, it was in the range of about 18 or 17 million.
Yeah, that dollar for dollar doesn't add up that fast.
They, and then requested, they could have a program, just like you said, that they will finance it, but you got 3 years to pay it. Just pay 3 years. I think it was 3 years, and they will finance, for like you said, dollar for dollar. So, you know, if it's costing $5 million, it's going to cost us 2.5 million.
Right, yeah.
So some of those numbers.
But that is something that has been discussed in council. I mean, it has been, talked
So we've
about.
generated 6.5 over the last 10 years? Is that what you said earlier? 6.5?
Net income over expenses. Over time.
30 years?
And that's how any other people want.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll move on from that. Ensure continued participation with dialogue with GSAT, CTC, and SCDOT on transportation projects affecting the town. I will say, when we were doing sidewalks, there are grants, or there were grants through CTC and GSAT, 80-20 matches that what we would do is do them during the winter time, and Public Works would install these sidewalks during the slow time. But there was 80-20 money out there to do sidewalks. So just give you guys information. For the expansion and upgrade of natural gas lines throughout the town, continue to provide a forum right, yeah. Encouraging the expansion of high-speed internet, wireless capabilities through town. Perform at intervals of at least once every 5 years of salary compensation survey to ensure the town is competitive and retention of employees.
Can we back up for 1 second?
Yep.
Just the internet and wireless capability. I mean, with 5G coming, is that moot point now? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the internet and wireless capability is right now. I think the internet is for individuals, right? Mm-hmm. And then the wireless, I mean, I think with technology of 5G, this is a moot point, I would assume.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, we're reading a comp plan that's about 10 or 12 years old.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Provide funding through each department's budget to allow for staff training and maintenance of needed certifications. Examine facility needs and plan for renovation and expansion of town hall. Continue efforts to routinely solicit resident and visitor feedback on services and facilities by the use of customer surveys. Obviously, we've done that. No, obviously, we need to do a little better on the survey part. That's all we can. Any questions on what we kind of went through? So this is an ongoing process, something we'll be doing for a while. So, it's always interesting to see where we were at and where we are today, to see how much progress we actually made. And for the most part, we've done reasonably well. All right, I will open it up for public comments. No comment? Okay. Commission comment?
Yeah, just a couple randomness to the goals that you outlined. One thing, sorry to mention when you were up there, was a very absolute statement around paying off debt, which fully supportive of. But with the other goals that are in there that cost money, I go back to, the financial planning part of this, is that right now we've got that $4 million cheap capital. We're at 2.14%, 15, 16 year loan. So some debt analysis should accompany an absolute statement of paying off all debt. So you're probably already there. The second thing I want to mention, not related to the goals, is related to medical marijuana. For anyone that's interested, The day before the Senate vote, there was 40 amendments to it. On the floor of the Senate, there was 73, I believe, amendments made to that bill. There is, the House version of the bill says no local government may prohibit medical cannabis. The Senate version says a local government can.
Cannabis or the establishment?
The establishment. Same sentence, the highlighted
Yeah,
in
the
yellow.
first one you read, didn't say establishment.
Sorry. So it was a one-word difference. The Senate bill says, the House bill says no local government may prohibit medical cannabis establishments, either expressly or through the enactment of ordinances or regulations that make their operation impractical or in jurisdiction. The Senate version is identical to that except for the first word that says a versus no. This says we can't say no, this says we can say. So I highlight that to share that there is nuance throughout this. As it goes through the House, so there's more than 3 times the amount of representatives than there is state senators. And if there's 70 on the floor at the moment of the vote, there's probably going to be a couple hundred changes to this. So I raise all that only for the point of we should not vote on the recommendation prior to a finalized bill passing.
That's exactly why we did not fit on this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I should have asked.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because I should have said that.
Now, if I understand correctly, May 13th is the drop dead date, 37 days from today. That's to get through the House. I don't know how long the governor has to sign it from that point forward. But if it's not through the House in 37 days, okay.
We're ready, but this whole thing may not.
Right.
And if you haven't read it, for anybody out there, there is a lot of just crazy, interesting things. No neon signs on it. Can't have caricatures or fun billboards. So it doesn't say anything about whether or not an existing business can have this as a line of business. It does say you need to have a separate insurance policy around it. If you have an existing business here and someone, CBD shop adding this to a line of business, there's some problems with credit card processing and the like. This is considered by the IRS money laundering, so it's got to be a cash business. But there's a lot of really interesting, right, if you get down to the minutia, but if you don't read it, and if any of us have not read it, and we're going to make a recommendation, that's, I'm not supporting anybody. Just suggest reading through it. Second pass of this, some of the stuff just really so resonates with me. Yeah, it's and the chief mentioned something about how much is going to SLED. Actually, he wasn't accurate there. I'm correcting him. He said that 5% is going to SLED. That's not true. All revenue, which is 6% sales tax, and another nuance. One bill says we can't assess another tax on top of it. Another bill says we can. So that's what we got to figure there. But all of that 6% goes into the Cannabis Program Fund for Implementation, Administration, and Enforcement, which is basically creating a new division of government. If anything is left out of that, that 5% of that leftover goes to SLED. So it's not 5% off the top, it's net. So this is it's politics of the finest in this bill. I'll go with my soapbox.
So are you saying you're for or against?
I'm not saying, I'm going to wait to the final verdict.
We don't know against that.
Yeah, I don't know against what.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that, Alex, for the research. It's good to know those things. But there was a packet here of wayfinding. It's just for informational purposes, or we're going to cover this in the next meeting?
At the last planning commission meeting, we talked about wayfinding signs, and we had talked about Georgetown and Conway, and that was just for information.
Okay, awesome.
I'll keep it brief, I promise. I really wanted to thank you for providing council's vision. That really helps take a lot of our guesswork out and making sure that we're adhering to a comprehensive goal. So thank you. there's still a lot to come. I really appreciate the research you've done. I think that there's a lot of pitfalls and moving too soon and too early. So, definitely in the camp. But, I mean, you put it in much better words. I don't want to be a first mover. Yeah. On this. That was it. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the public comment.
Yeah, I'll echo those comments. Thank you for some of the things you guys talked about, I really hadn't thought about. So thank you for educating and broadening my vision of what we're looking at. So I appreciate that. Any other comments? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.